Hey, Alex, a lawyer and a financial advisor walk into a bar.
And then what happens, Dave?
Well, the question that is very dear to my heart. Do I need financial advice?
Do I know the answer to that straight away? Everyone needs financial advice, and they need it from Dave right now.
Well, I'll qualify that one, and I'll be I'll put my lawyer hat on. It depends if it should be me or someone else, because it comes back to circumstances.
Yeah,
but it is. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah. I get asked it a bit by clients, and I think a lot of my clients think, oh, well, financial advice is either for people who are really wealthy.
Yep.
But then people who are really wealthy sometimes think they know better than financial advisors already.
Yep.
And a lot of people I know, in my experience, they get their financial advice from at the barbecue, from their brother-in-law who seems to know something, or from their uncle.
No, but that financial advice is it would be the stock picking punt. Because I bought this, 5-cent stock that's gone to $1 and I've made a bucket load of dough out of it. But that's what, and this is, I suppose, when you start to come into the question of, do I need financial advice? Is getting people to understand the definition of what financial advice is. And there's aspects. Some people say it's all about money. That is definitely one aspect.
Right, yeah.
It's all about investments and what should I do. Yep. However, a lot of people forget along the way that the financial advice component also picks up your estate planning.
Oh, yeah, you will,
because you need to understand, well, what would happen if something happened to me? So I might have all these amazing investments, and it might be sitting within some legal structures. So it's either in my own name, it's in my spouse's name, it's in a joint name, it's in a trust, it's in a company, it's in a unit trust. It may be have passed through from an inheritance. So if I'm the individual and something happens to me, what happens to that asset?
But do also, my kids get it or not?
Absolutely. And then you mix into I'm single, divorced, de facto, separated.
Kids from the first marriage, kids from the second marriage.
You add all of that little bit in there, and then it's like then you may have an aspect where you've got a child or your spouse or whatever may have some form of addiction. So there could be drug or alcohol or gambling addiction. That's no good. Financial advice. So if I'm deceased and I've got a child that then inherits my money, do I really want that money to flow to this child who's got a gambling addiction?
Yeah, that's
that you know of.
That is financial advice. That's
correct.
I would think it's buying good shares and so on, but you're actually thinking, well, I need to make sure that if my child has a drug addiction, say that, and I give them a bunch of money, then they might end up, ODing or whatever. And financial advice is part of that.
But that also so it can be that is one aspect, but it's also so. For instance, you're a lawyer, high risk. From being sued.
Not for me, I'm very good at it.
Yeah. No, but it can be the basis that should you hold investments in your name?
Yes.
Or somehow hold them in a trust or another entity structure that separates the risk. So therefore, if you're personally sued, the assets that you have accumulated cannot be accessed. And then it also rolls into, what about superannuation strategy? What about my borrowing capacity? How should I do it? Is it good debt versus bad debt?
So if I put my assets somewhere else, I might not be able to borrow, which might be a problem for when I want to buy a house or whatever.
Correct. All of those issues, and how do you borrow proceeds within a super fund, and it has to be self-managed, and if which assets can you purchase? But it's that really broad approach when we talk about financial advice. But the perception from a lot of people is that it's only about, well, what assets should I buy? That is a small aspect of it all.
When I think of it, I think it's, should I buy property? Should I buy shares? Which shares? And how do I minimise my tax along the journey? And possibly where should I put it in super or my own name or whatever? So obviously it does touch on all those things, but it's much broader. In that you're really saying, it's about all of those things and how they interrelate. So you've got an all-over plan.
Correct. Yeah. And so when people do say, so the topic that we're talking about today is, do I need financial advice? The answer is always, one, it depends. But it's a bit like when people ask, do I really need a will?
Mm.
Well,
you don't have to have one if you don't want one.
Correct. So you don't need to, but there is a government formula that is legislated that says if you die intestate, so without a will, this is the way that your assets will flow through.
Yeah.
So again, you don't have to, but do you want the government to say how your assets should flow through to the next generation?
Yeah. There's certain things that'll happen automatically, like if you own a joint house, then the other joint owner will take it over. So if you own jointly with your brother, say, then your brother owns the house as soon as you die. Maybe that's fine with you, maybe it's not. Maybe you wanted to go to your children or whatever. So it's just a matter of having your eyes open as to what risks you're taking or how it'll end up. It's also, I mean, it's a real pain for people who survive you. It's a real pain if you don't have a will, even if it goes through the government system, because that system is going to cost them a lot of money and take a lot of time to administer when a will's very simple.
Yep. Yeah, but it also comes back to do I need a financial advisor or do I need financial advice?
Yep.
I mean, from our perspective, we look at it on the basis of let's understand what the key values are of the family or the individual or the couple.
Yeah.
And we nominate 5 key values that we ask people to pick. And we then anchor our decisions on those 5 values. Now, they can be counter to that. That's fine. But we've gone through this process and said to people, this is the foundation piece. This is why you're making some of these conscious decisions. And so it's going through that process of knowing and educating yourself about the certain things you know about. But like anything, there's always unknowns and unknown knowns. And, the whole sort of, you don't know what you don't know, but also you don't always know the options that could be available.
Yeah.
And so part of that discussion, even though it is with a financial advisor, it might be that we need you as the lawyer involved in the discussion and the accountant at the table because you could have quite a complex structure or looking to move from, say, a corporate environment into a private business of your own.
Yeah.
So therefore, what are the steps that you should take along the way whilst de-risking the approach that you take? So it's not just the one advisor.
Yeah.
1 and 1 should be 3 and 4, not just 2.
Yeah.
And so that's where you kind of get people to, and it's always an interesting process when you take people through, and if they've never received advice before, and also a lot of people question, do I really need to pay that? And can't I just, like I had questions before. Oh, you want to charge that? I thought you'd be able to give me all that advice for sort of $400.
Yeah, or for free, like I can get it from the bank, or there's insurance companies and all that you sort of effectively get it for free. Or particularly when they're trying to flog you a product, you get it for free.
There's nothing for free in this world, Alex. You know that.
So is that right? If you go through, and you get free advice through they're getting charged you through the sale of the product that they sell to you when they sell you a fund or whatever?
Well, the rules have changed. So if you are to be giving financial advice, you have to be licensed. End of story, right? You've got to be on the.
A lot of accountants give financial advice, or say they don't. People rely on them for financial advice.
Correct. So it might be that they're running pretty close to the edge.
Yeah.
They can give tax advice, and then financial advisors can give financial tax advice. So it's a little bit different, but it's very similar. But the issue then becomes. And this is where the Royal Commission occurred in the past. So a lot of that's changed. So the banks have got out of financial advice, but that's where you'll hear when they talk about it, sometimes ads on television, please refer to the product disclosure statement, or this is a general advice warning. This is general advice. It's not specific to your circumstances. Yeah. So they can give advice on that basis. Yeah. But if they're starting to go, well, Alex, this is what you've got, this is what you need, that's personal advice. You need to get it from a licensed advisor.
Right.
Because then you're starting to step into an environment where you're breaching laws and you can be sued for it.
And if you got to pay them a fee, they can't take it out of the product?
Well, that's the way it used to be, but more and more the position is that there is an agreed fee. But look, I mean, even coming from ASIC, Australian Securities Investment Commission, they've said their research shows that the minimum fee for anyone to receive some pretty basic advice is at least $3,500 to $4,000 a year.
Right.
Minimum.
Yeah.
So when people say, "Oh, I thought I could get it for a couple of $100," what, half an hour of my time?
Yeah.
Like when you've got to gather all this detail. So this is where it becomes difficult. So it comes back to, and the other dilemma a lot of people have, but it's only for the wealthy. Now, that becomes a relative question.
Yeah.
Because what is your definition of wealth?
Yep.
Now, it might be financial, but it also, for some people, it's like, but I've got time to do stuff. And I'd rather have less money in the bank, but I have more time, but I cut my resources accordingly. And so that's always an interesting dilemma for a lot of people. But sometimes you can receive some advice when you're younger, and you may only receive it once off, and then you go, right, you've put me on a particular path. I'll then come back and see you in 3 or 5 years' time. Right. Or some people prefer to have ongoing advice.
Yep.
But it's not always, and the things that it's like anything. You don't know what you don't know. So sometimes you can make a decision now. It's a bit like when someone wants to start a business and they come and see their lawyer. Oh, look, I'll just set it up I'll just set up a business name and I'll just set it up in my name. The business takes off and they go, oh, actually, in hindsight, if it was such a good idea, you probably should have established it in the correct entity structure right from the start to get all the benefits. Yep. And it's that retrospectively look back that people come to us and go, oh, I wish I'd come to see you 5 years ago because things have occurred that make it very difficult to retrospectively go back. Or if they're moving an asset from one name to the next, they've got to pay capital gains tax or transfer fees. And
too late once they've actually moved it.
Well, the horse is bolted.
Back. Yeah, that's right. So are there some sort of touchstones or some key times in your life? Like I'm thinking divorce or starting your own business or when you start a self-managed super fund or whatever, where you might go, okay, hang on, something's happened here and I previously didn't get financial advice, but I think I should reach out now and do that?
Look, I think there's a couple of stages, and it can be depending upon where you are. So one of them can be, when someone's, say, moving from university into, and they might have worked for 3 to 4 years, and they get into a partnership, like a relationship partnership. So marrying, divorce, separated, de facto. I think that's always a good time.
Yep.
Children, having a child, and preferably prior to having a child to get some of the stuff, because it comes back to getting your insurances in place and superannuation and those things.
Yep.
So I think early in your career can be quite good to set a foundation.
Yep.
Then there's that period leading into, you might have had kids and all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, I've got to get my estate planning and my salary's getting up to a point. I'm like, can this be, how can I manage it more cost effectively?
Yeah.
But then there's also the next tier above, which is in your sort of 60s, I suppose. Kids have finished school. You're starting to move into a different phase of your life. But you also may be in a position knowing that there's an inheritance coming down to you.
Yes.
But if you're in your 60s and you've got adult children, part of that then says we encourage all of our clients, if they've got children over 18, for instance, make sure they've got a super fund set up and they're not changing a new one every time they get a job. Yeah. Let's make sure they've got a really basic will and powers of attorney in place. They're 18, they're an adult under the law. Therefore, let's get that stuff set up. Insurance is a little bit different, and also some education on some borrowing capacity, because if there's some family proceeds to support them, you want to make sure that they've got a good debt strategy in place. And that just becomes a flow-on effect as you kind of deal with it. But look, the best time to do it is when they say it's no different than when when's the best time to start an investment or plant a tree today.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's sort of, and you don't have to be the whole gamut. You can just take some episodic stuff along the way. But again, it depends. And that's why when we work with some family groups, we might do some stuff for the parents and then just do some small stuff for the kids. Again, estate planning, making sure the super fund's appropriate, and then just keep them engaged in the process and educating them.
Yeah, well, certainly some of the clients we've had have gone off to financial advisors has been because they got divorced, and the person they got divorced from was the person who was looking after the finances, had been for years. So perhaps they weren't as financially savvy as their partner, or didn't think they were, and so they went off and got financial advice. And also in a divorce, you often you might have gone from having a couple of houses maybe to having some cash, and you think, okay, do I now buy another house, or do I do something else with that cash? Or, and your life has changed a lot usually through a divorce, financially and emotionally and practically in all sorts of ways. And so you get some advice about, how do you deal with all of that? And perhaps you weren't used to dealing with it before. And so,
and also within that, the rules are there's a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. So if I've got a couple that's come to me and we're working with both of them, and they come to me and say, I'm divorcing, I actually have to refer one of the members of that couple to a third-party advisor.
Yes, you can't.
I can't take on both and give, because then there's a conflict.
Yes.
And that's under the code of ethics. Like you just got to do that, because it's one of those scenarios which is frustrating, because sometimes the couple say, look, we're amicably separating for whatever reason. We both really like you. We've done a lot of work with you over the years. Why can't we stay with you? That's just the rules.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that would be the case in law, although I think the conflict of interest there is much more acute. I think in financial advice you would have thought it'd be less of a big deal.
Well, it's because you're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the person's personal circumstances. So if you're dealing with one and they're separating, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm being told one thing from one member of the couple and then something from the other member. It's like, hang on, I'm starting to get into that grey area. So it's just, unfortunately, it's just one of those circumstances, really, that you got to deal with it.
The other one, obviously, we see, which you've already touched on, is we see, inheritance comes along. And so someone, again, their financial position sort of changes all of a sudden. And they, it might be a working person earning, a decent living and everything. And suddenly they inherit, $1 million. And they're like, well, what do I, and they might not need it. Maybe they do need it. Do they, how do they deal with that? And the inheritance, it might come as part of a trust. Like, it might not just come in a lump sum. It might come as a trust, and you can invest that trust income and then tax advantages to getting it out of the trust and so on. And so that's, again, another time that it seems that people sort of, that's something to remind you that that's a good time to see a financial advisor, because your financial situation has changed radically. And certainly there is some examples of people receiving inheritances and frittering them away or doing something dumb with them, because they're just not used to. I mean, I guess it happens to us all. If you got $1 million, you'd be liable to do something stupid with it.
But it's also so part of that process can also be that there's different ways that you can receive those proceeds.
Yeah.
And therefore, for some people, if they've already retired, it can have an impact upon their pension.
Yes.
So they're all of a sudden. So should you be receiving those proceeds? Should you be leaving the proceeds within a trust?
Yes.
You like the estate process, or if I receive these proceeds rather than, and they may be in a position where they're only working part-time, but they may have a debt facility that's available to them. Sometimes people then will turn and go, I'll just pay out all that debt. And then they let the things settle down. They go, actually, I want to access that money again. They go back to the bank, and the bank says, but you can't service that debt. We're not giving that to you again. But, well, what do you mean? I received this inheritance and I paid that off. Yeah, but you're not working full-time, therefore we're not going to give you. So that's where you start to talk about, should I receive financial advice? Absolutely, because it helps you make some decisions. One, that potentially could save you a lot of money. Two, may have some major tax implications.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and even when it's a 2-year window from death to, at what point does it reset the cost base on the asset? Do you sell it within that 2-year window? How does it deal with, and again, if you come back to family situations, is the asset to be split between siblings or children, or like all of these scenarios? You don't want to rush into some of these things. Get a full understanding of your circumstances and the implications of receiving an inheritance, because you can set up some really good legacy stuff that means that you, as the receiver of it, but also to your children, can receive the benefits of this in longevity. So don't just go, oh, this is great. And we are seeing an enormous amount of proceeds flowing through into family groups. They just are, because sometimes family groups don't realise how much property, the post-war immigrant that's been out, that's worked their ass off literally for years, and all of a sudden they go, oh, I didn't realise well, dad had died, mum's still around. They've got 15 properties. Really?
Yep.
Did anyone know that?
Yep.
And they might have paid for them a small amount. It's like, yeah, that's in a $15 million, $20 million estate.
Yep.
And there may be one child, or there might be two.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And this is where it comes back to, how do we educate people along the way? And do I need financial advice, which is the topic for today? Clearly, I'm biased on the basis that I do think it's appropriate for people. But also sometimes it is. It's appropriate for a period of time, and then it might be, you know what? You're pretty well set. Your life's pretty simple. You set everything up. But then also some people say, okay, I don't want to do the full gamut, but I still want to stay engaged with you. I always just want to have someone available to help me. Can they stay on as a client? And absolutely. And so they want someone just to keep an eye on stuff for them. Or if they're not financial and they don't really enjoy, here's what happens. A lot of people go, yeah, I don't really like doing all the paperwork and I don't really want to do all that stuff. Can't I just pay you guys to do it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. We've got some high earning clients who don't want to do anything but their thing. You know, they might be a surgeon, they might be whatever. They do not want to do anything but what's up their alley, and you know that means they're more. That means that we're more hands on, and others that we're more hands off. And I'm sure you're the same. And that's fine. I know my first foray into financial, when I first got financial advice, it was a one-off, and then they said, okay, once you get to X and Y level, you write now for the next few years, and once you get to X and Y level, then we'll revisit it. But it wasn't every year because I didn't need it. I just needed, to make sure I was heading in the right course. And I can tell you from experience, and putting aside my relationship with you, that it is. You do not know all the things that financial advisors know, even if you go, I think I'm clever, I think I'm financially savvy, but you just can't weigh in the tax implications, the structuring implications, the investment implications, the life values type stuff, that what you're structuring and inheritance type stuff. But it all needs to work together. You can't do it all independently because they're all related things. And the financial advisor will just, if nothing else, just another kind of set of eyes to go over those things and make sure they're accord with your values. Because we see it all the time that people are quite wealthy and successful and whatever, and but their wealth and success sort of amounts to nothing because their life doesn't go the way they want.
Correct. So it's the analogy. The analogy on that one is that you've got a four-legged stool.
Yeah.
Okay. One leg is asset management.
Yeah.
One leg is debt management.
Yeah.
One is estate planning.
Yeah.
And one is risk management, so insurance and things like that. Now, someone might be really good at the asset management and the debt management.
Yeah.
But you go to sit on that stool, there's no estate planning, and there's no insurance policies or understanding of the risk if they're either an employee or a business owner. So the stool falls over. Yeah. But that can be the same analogy when you say, yeah, but Alex, you and I talk all the time.
Yeah.
We know what's going on with you, but something happens to you.
Yeah.
What about to your spouse? Like, where do they sit in the picture? They're like, I don't know what's going on. Alex has been dealing with it for years. And there's lots of families like that. And that's the whole point of getting it together and talking and being articulate in what they want. And we hear it all the time with the people that we talk with. We sit in the room and we say, well, what are some of the things that you'd like to do? And the looks you get from the couples are like, you want to do what? Since when have you wanted to fly a plane or go hiking in the Himalayas or you've never told me that. Or then, do you know what I mean? All of a sudden it's like, so this is great that you want to do this. So let's get it to the point that we can help you. And that's why we talk about wealth activism. Let's help you along the journey of life, enjoy some of the things that you want to do and not just leave it till, I'll do it when I retire. My God, can people stop doing that? Like,
you can't hike in the Himalayas when you retire. You might not be able to.
Well, you might be dead. No one knows. We're all going to die. So people go, I don't want to talk about it. Like, well, let me tell you a piece of truth. We're all going to die. Like, that's the reality.
Yeah.
We don't know when, though.
Yeah.
So when we can do things, and it doesn't have to be crazy. It can be just, we still have a lot of discussions around, I really want to make sure that the kids still come over with their partners and whoever for dinner every Friday night, whatever it is. Maybe it's once a month. Awesome. And we get it catered for once a month and we do 10 of them a year.
Yeah. And you get it catered so it doesn't stress you out. So you make sure.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Well, it cost me $2,000 every time I do the dinner. I know, but how much fun is it? The food's brought in, the kids are all there, the grandkids are there, and you have a great time, and someone cleans it all up. Is that worth every cent as opposed to, but I'll give the kids, $500,000 when I die?
Yeah.
I reckon your kids and your grandkids would say, I'd rather spend the time with you as our scarcest resource along the journey than you give me that money when you're dead. Like, I want to spend time with people. So this is where we start to really get into people. Do you need, and that's part of the financial advice process, is to challenge people in their thinking about, because too many times people go, but I just can't afford that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, well, I love that in that, that financial advice there is really about, it's in a way, life advice. It's about, and it's about living the life you want. When I think of financial advice, and this is what you're challenging with the wealth activism thing. When I think of financial advice, I think it's about Scrooge McDuck counting his pennies, right?
Yeah.
Diving into the big pool of cash and trying to make sure you pick the right stock but it's actually not. The good financial advice is about making sure you have the kind of life you want and you plan for. If you want to go hiking in the Himalayas with your grandchildren, then you go and do that, and you make sure that you've got the money to support that so that it can actually happen, rather than worrying about it one day and it never happening, and then and you might have a few extra dollars, but so what?
As I say, who wants to be the wealthiest bloke lying in the graveyard?
Yeah.
And your kids don't talk. Like, there's so many exciting things for people to be able to do, and just it doesn't have to be. It's not all about money.
Yeah.
People say, I mean, you're hearing all of these reports coming out about this level of loneliness and isolation, and people want to connect. People are human. They want to touch and they want to feel and they want to sort of spend time with people. You know what? Who cares? You don't have to go to a fancy restaurant. Go camping, have a barbecue at home, just cook a meal for someone. Like, come over and let's just have a meal together. People go, oh my God, that is so much fun. Like, it doesn't break the bank.
Right.
But stop thinking about, it's got to be something really big and always fancy and flash. It's like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I heard a wonderful story from just an individual that talks a lot, and he'd been, the very wealthy family, and the grandfather was having some conflict with some of the kids and the grandkids, and he was all about, like, he'd worked, and it was all that, very much that older mindset. He was into his 80s, and it was like, no, I'm doing it all for the kids and the family, and blah, 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 blah. And the kids are like limited relationship with the father because he just worked and drove them and really rode it pretty hard. But one of the grandkids turned around and said to the grandfather, because they'd had a facilitated kind of family discussion, and they said, Grandpa, we don't care how many planes or boats and cars you have. We just want you to spend time with us. And this guy just went bang. He's like, what do you mean? He said, well, we don't care about the boats and the cars and the planes and the helicopters and we just want to have some time with you. And you got to bring people back to that simplicity.
Yeah.
Like, don't control through the money, control it through the joy, and educate the younger generation about the fun you can have with it and how you can share your time and your experience and knowledge and stories and, and spend it along the way. I mean, people come to us and go, I can't spend it. No. We'll help you spend it along the way. You'll be fine. You do this and you shuffle here. But again, it does come back to the question that a lot of people say, and it's a very good statement which we use a lot, which they do on the airplanes. Ensure that you apply the mask first before assisting others.
Yeah.
It's the same in financial advice. We need to make sure you as a couple are in a position that you're sustainable before you start supporting kids and grandchildren. After that, that's excess liquidity and excess wealth. How do we deal with it? So we get you sorted. Are you comfortable? Yep. Make sure you've got enough. Some years you can give away more or spend more with the family. Other years you're not so much liquid because investments may not have gone in their particular way or whatever the circumstance. But that's a really one that we use a lot with people.
Yeah.
And it's so important. We've got to make sure you're not it's not being detrimental to your own affairs in the support of others.
Yeah.
And that's a mindset issue.
Sure. Well, we might leave it there, Dave. Thank you for your insights on should I seek financial advice. I always say you should seek financial advice with Dave. That's what I tell people. But yeah, that was very helpful. And I mean, I learned a few things about what financial advice is and isn't, and certainly about that kind of wealth activism. I think it's just very insightful. There's no point in being a wealthy dead man. Or we're all going to keel over from a heart attack or the cancer one day.
Yep.
And so you want to do what you can, and you think of financial advice as not being part of that. It's all part of the kind of picture.
Yep, and seek the help, and people can give you a different perspective, very different perspective. Well, thank you, Alex. So as we close out our conversation today, I would like to thank Alex from Taurus Legal Management. He can be contacted via LinkedIn at Alex Martin or via the website tauruslawyers.com.au.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank David Murdoch, the wealth activist from Paxton Bridge. And you can contact him at the website at www.paxtonbridge.com or at LinkedIn at David Murdoch.
Excellent. Cheers. Thank you, Alex. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.